Hello and welcome to Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reflecting on a number of the Frankenstein movies that we've seen over the years. With the release of The Bride, this inspired me to go back and read the book Frankenstein. I did read it many years ago, but I thought it would be fun to read it again and then have a Frankenstein season of films. There are literally hundreds of Frankenstein films. Wikipedia says that there's more than 400. I certainly am not able to watch them all. I chose to watch the most famous ones and it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience. Firstly, just let me make a comment on the book. This is well worth reading. I do find Gothic horror is all dragged out a bit, but that aside, this is a really enjoyable book. It's so much more sophisticated than any of the films, as you would expect, really. There is a fascination in the films with Frankenstein as a monster, but in the book, the creature is much more kind of human, emotional, and intellectual. He only becomes a monster because that's the way society treats him. The judgment of the other. It's a book about the sociology of crime, where the creature is manufactured into a criminal by society's systemic rejection. Prejudice creates this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a fantastic book with fantastic themes. None of the films get anywhere near this. Of course, that often is the case. But Frankenstein has been turned into a monster story when it's so much more. So let's start with the 1931 Frankenstein, the first film directed by James Whale. This looks silly, it's overcooked, it's a bit amateurish, but it's really charming. It's notable that it has no music, but this does create a certain eeriness. It's stark, it's spare, and it really emphasises Boris Karloff's grunts as the creature. That universal Frankenstein is iconic, the bolts and flat head. I loved this character as a kid. It's definitely not a representation of the book, but everything about it is enjoyable. It's cinema history and it's fun to watch. So then we come to the 1935 film Bride of Frankenstein, also directed by James Whale. This is kind of the what-if sequel. In the book, Victor refuses to make the female version of the monster, and this is the film of what would happen if he did. As with the new Maggie Gyllenhaal film, we have Mary Shelley speaking at the start of the film, reclaiming her own story. I do like this device. This version also has music, so that helps to give it a classic golden age of Hollywood feel. The Bride of Frankenstein doesn't really add anything to the previous film. It's more of the same. It's a typical sequel. The exception to this comes at the end of the film when we see the bride. She's got this quirky, crazy hair and she moves in jerky movements. It's such an interesting character, but it only comes at the end of the film. It definitely would have been interesting to see more of that character, and I think that this was Maggie Gyllenhaal's inspiration for The Bride. Then we come to the 1957 Curse of Frankenstein, directed by Terence Fisher. This is when we move into the Hammer period. Hammer Studios was a British studios that made low-budget films with an emphasis on horror. The Curse of Frankenstein has that definitive Hammer aesthetic, vibrant colours, saturated sets, this visceral British Gothic energy. Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee are both in this film, absolute icons of British horror. This version makes Victor Frankenstein, the villain, more than the monster. Peter Cushing plays Victor as a kind of cold sociopath. He's dishonest, he cheats, he's a murderer, he's killing people for body parts. The focus shifts compared to the previous films where the creator is more monstrous than the creation. Frankenstein looks very different than that universal Frankenstein. Christopher Lee's creature is perhaps more gruesome, more realistic of a body made from patching different parts together. For copyright reasons, they couldn't use the universal bolts and flathead, but I still think they did a good job in creating a monster. Then we come to 1994's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, directed by Kenneth Branagh. This is a big, glossy, operatic Hollywood production. It's got a massive, dramatic score compared to the 1931 Silence. De Niro's creature is amazing. He's articulate, he's thinking, much truer to the novel. It does have a big difference from the book towards the end, where Victor's fiancée, Elizabeth, becomes the bride. But it does pick up that iconic look from the 1935 film, the crazy hair and the jerky movements. Helena Bonham Carter is excellent in this role. She's clearly secondary to De Niro as the creature, but this again highlights how interesting it would have been to see more of her story. You can see where Gyllenhaal's inspiration came from. Then we come to the 2025 Frankenstein, directed by Guillermo del Toro. I've done a separate review of this film a little while back. This is a glossy, handsome version. It's visually rich, but it's indulgent at 2.5 hours. For me, it's an hour too long. It does look great, but I wasn't convinced by it. The love story felt thin and superficial. Also, the father-son reconciliation at the end of the film felt out of place. This doesn't happen in the book or any of the other versions, and this kind of sentimental ending just didn't feel in keeping with the overall kind of story. I did enjoy how fantastic this film looked. Jacob Elordi is a good Frankenstein's monster, and Mia Goth is excellent too. But overall, this film lacks the depth of Branagh's version or of Gyllenhaal's The Bride. So we then come to Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride. Now, I've done a separate whole review on this, but I think you could just describe this as a punk rock alternative to all those films, a kind of feminist fury version. Jessie Buckley is fantastic, switching between the various personalities of her character. Christian Bale is definitely a secondary character, but he's still a good creature. He's still a good monster. I love the idea of the brain attack, the Joker-style social rebellion initiated by the bride, reclaiming life. I thoroughly enjoyed this film. So in conclusion, I loved doing this. It's really interesting to see how this iconic character has been treated over the past 100 years. The book is well worth reading, and it is more sophisticated than any of the films. It's hard to single out which film I think is best. There's a really good mix of styles. I did enjoy the 1931 iconic film. This feels like essential film history. This gave us that initial kind of image of Frankenstein. I also loved the 1957 classic Hammer horror version. There's a nostalgic element to this for me because these were the films that were on TV when I was a child. The 1994 Branagh version is perhaps the truest to the book and really enjoyable. And finally, The Bride is a really creative and bold take with amazing performance by Jessie Buckley. I think that all of these are well worth watching. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.